Defence industry is vital for Australia's security. Asia Pacific Defence Reporter presents editor Kim Bergman with Australia's defence industry leaders as they unpack the major issues.
Hello, Jamie. Well, if we can start with you, can you please give a little bit of background about where you fit in with Navantia Australia and what is the whole concept of the Technology Partner Network?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kim. Yes, my name is Jamie Gibbs. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Navantia Australia. The Technical Partner Network has been established by Navantia Australia as part of its establishment of support of a sovereign shipbuilding and ship sustainment capability here in Australia. Navantia Australia has established itself here in Australia in 2012, and we've established quite a good and strong capability for the sustainment of the vessels that Navantia designed out of Spain, the LHDs, the destroyers, the Hobart-class destroyers, the AOR vessels, and the landing craft that go with the LHDs. But over that time, we've steadily increased our engagement with Australian industry to provide even further engineering support to a lot of the projects that we do. Last year, in October last year, we launched what we call the Technical Partner Network, which is a group of sovereign Australian engineering companies that have been established here, and they provide invaluable services to supplement Navantia's own capability. We've done that for a couple of reasons. One is the ongoing capability growth and support of continuous shipbuilding initiatives for Australia. We think that that's an essential part of maintaining the Navy's capability. We also want to leverage the talent and innovation of established maritime designers in Australia. We need to remember that there are a lot of established and very talented engineering companies here in Australia, and we wish to leverage that capability to provide the services that we provide. And the last point is leveraging the capacity. I think one of the main points that we've observed since setting up is the scale of capacity that the Australian Navy and Defence require out of the Australian industry far exceeds any capability and capacity that any one company possesses in Australia. And to make this a truly successful endeavour, leverage of all of industry working together under one sort of umbrella and one sort of delivery framework is what's going to be required.
Okay, so we're talking about a network rather than a sort of hierarchical arrangement. What are the fundamental benefits of doing it that way?
Yeah, well, as I've said, really leveraging the capability of industry and capacity. One of the key things that we've observed is that the workload and the resource forecasting of engineering companies in support of sustainment is quite lumpy. It is difficult to predict. It is difficult to manage. What we observe out of a lot of companies in Australia is that they are agile and very nimble in their way of operating, and we need to tap into that agility to properly service the customer in the different needs and capacities that they require.
Okay, is it a more complicated way of doing things? And what was the genesis? Why did you just decide to do it this way?
We've had a long-standing belief that collective involvement of Australian companies is what's required. We don't have an ambition to do everything ourselves. We do believe that the original ship designer, with the data and the knowledge that supports that, is key to supporting the vessels on an ongoing basis. But we don't have an ambition to do it all ourselves, and neither should we. I don't think that that's in the best interests of the country and of the maritime business that is established in Australia.
In a practical sense, how does it work? Do you approach companies? Do they approach you? Are you already aware of them? How does that side of things play out?
Yeah, so we've created a process where we make contact with like-minded companies that offer the right sort of capabilities that are required to provide the engineering services to the Navy. We'll do a sort of a capability not a capability and assessment as such, but just an audit to understand the capabilities and the different systems and tools and processes and people that these companies have. And then we will look to leverage that capability in the best way that we can to deliver projects to the Navy. It is true that up until this point, the engagement with different companies has been quite sporadic and ad hoc, and that's reflective of some of the difficulties we have in planning work. We're very happy to be starting to talk about a new contract with the Navy, which is called the Designer Support Contractor role, which will provide specific engineering services to those ships. And one of the important things that comes with that contract is an annual planning cycle for engineering work. And that will actually enable not only ourselves, but also our TPN network to adequately plan their year in ahead. It'll give them a platform to make investments where they need to, apply the correct measure of growth into their businesses. And should shore up a lot of certainty in different companies' management structures and investments.
And Jamie, how many companies are we talking at the moment?
Right now, we have just 21 companies within the network. That is not closed shop by any means. So we will continue to seek out companies and to grow that capacity. And not to mention the capability as well. We don't profess to be able to do everything, and there are capabilities within the industry that are extremely important to get involved.
And of course, these days everyone talks about being customer focused. What's the benefit to defence from doing things this way?
Yeah, I think what we hope to achieve, and I'm absolutely sure we will achieve, is that we will be able to provide the collective efforts of many different engineering companies, the outputs of that, to the Navy within a framework that ensures appropriate technical governance and quality assurance, which I think is really important. So by delivering under one framework, we get a consistent output to the Navy. We start to generate consistent and meaningful outputs to service the ships.
We've got 21 at the moment, but you say that the scope for including more, sort of on an, I assume, an as-needed basis. Do you have a feel for how big the network might eventually get?
I would like to dream that this could be a very large organisation. It will essentially be constrained by the scope of the contracts that we have with the Commonwealth, with Defence, and what the scope of the work is. I mean, whilst I'd like to see the TPN get very large, to spread it too thin would be disingenuous, I think, to the companies and missing the point of actually allowing these companies to invest on the back of this arrangement.
How long have you been trying to do this, and have you been getting any feedback from Defence, or is it just too early to know?
Defence is very supportive of the idea. Absolutely, they have told us that they are very happy with the endeavour, and that the idea of delivering many different companies' work within a common model and a common governance structure. So no, we have a lot of support from Defence. I think in terms of how long has this been taking, I think this has been a natural evolution of Navantia Australia's growth. We've steadily grown our own capability and have been engaging industry partners as we go on an as-needs basis. But we've reached a stage now, we're on the back of the DSC contracts and the sheer scale of the work that we're doing, which it becomes a natural progression to actually formalise this and make it a more strategic approach for industry.
Okay, and a final one for you, because then we'll turn to a couple of your team members. In a practical day-to-day sense, how does communication in the network work? Are you in touch all the time, or are you just sending up regular emails? How does that side of things work?
So a couple of things there. We'll be setting up a portal that we will use for formal communications through to our TPN members. that'll include the engagement on different packages of work throughout the annual planning cycle. And it'll also allow us the sharing of the technical data with all of the different companies, so that the TPN members can actually start working with 3D CAD models that were developed as part of the original design of the ships, and use the actual native documentation for the purpose of their work. In terms of engagement, we'll be seeking to actually engage the TPN in the upfront establishment of the workload profile for the whole year, in around the March timeframe before the start of each financial year, and that'll allow the different companies to be involved in the discussion about which tasks they wish to take on, which tasks they are able to take on, and which tasks may be a little bit outside where their capability is at this point in time.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And I'll switch now to John Robertson and Rubicon Associates. Sounds slightly ominous there, John. Crossing the Rubicon. Why don't you say a few words, first of all, about what your company does and your role in it?
Yeah, so my role is the Strategic Program Development Manager, and Rubicon is a professional engineering consultancy, and we specialise in the maritime domain, specifically focusing on complex design, systems integration across a range of naval platforms. Company's coming up to its 10th birthday next year, about 35 full-time equivalent personnel spread across the country. So we have a central office here in Melbourne, which is our hub for our design and engineering efforts. We have an office in Port Adelaide, which we opened from a strategic context to be able to support what's happening in South Australian shipbuilding sector. And similarly, we've recently opened an office in Fremantle to gear up and position for what's happening in Western Australia in terms of future programs.
And how's life for SMEs? How are you doing at the moment in the naval domain?
Yeah, it's tough at the moment. One could argue that we're certainly at the bottom of the food chain, but in that respect, I don't think there's a great deal of things happening in the naval sector at the moment. We're building up, waiting for a couple of years. But in that regard, we're thankful that we do have relationships like we do with Navantia and the TPN and the involvement there, because that actually keeps us engaged with engineering activities and design activities, and it enables us to keep a baseload of work going in these times.
Okay, and no pressure with Jamie, still on the line, but how's the relationship with Navantia, and how did you guys make contact with each other?
Well, I think Rubicon, the principals of Rubicon have probably had an engagement with Navantia since it first opened our office in St Kilda Road many, many years ago. But over the last 6 years, we've probably done about 20 different projects for Navantia, and our teams work in different ways. In some cases, we have personnel that are embedded within Navantia, and some where we're taking scope of work and doing those packages. The step to move from just being a subcontractor to a member of the TPN was a really strategically beneficial one for us. Enables us to sort of, have an opportunity to grow our skills and our capability in line with what Navantia is doing, and enables us as a collective to contribute to that national sovereign shipbuilding capability.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you mentioned sovereign capability, because, it's a very regular buzz phrase for the last few years. How important do you think it is to be able to build up strength in Australian capabilities?
Yeah, Kim, I think it's absolutely key. We need to take charge and carriage of our own destiny in terms of being able to maintain, sustain and modernise the assets that we have. And we won't be able to do this effectively in the time, particularly when we start to look at geopolitical circumstances around the world and what's happening in our region. We need to be able to have that ability to have those resources available and the skills and knowledge to actually apply that to our naval assets. It's absolutely paramount, I believe, that we invest in that capability, and it's through the TPN that we do see this investment starting to flow down and channel into smaller companies like ourselves.
Okay, well, and a final one for you before we move on. You did mention future opportunities. How do you see those shaping up? Do you have any in particular in mind?
Well, very excited about what Jamie said about the DSC contracts. We're big supporters of Navantia, and we'd like to do more. Where a lot of our work to date is focused probably predominantly around the LHD platforms and a bit of work on the DEG. We'd certainly like to be able to extend our involvement into all of the platforms that Navantia supports. And I think that comes through the relationship that we have with Navantia, the ability to have open, honest conversations to understand, what Navantia's needs are and what I call what good looks like from a Navantia perspective, so that we can, adapt, mould our own resources and capability, the skills we have, the knowledge we have, the tools we have to align with what Navantia's needs are. I think doing that creates the basis for us to get involved in those future opportunities in terms of supporting Navantia, but also gives us the skill sets to support other naval programs throughout Australia as well and provide that ultimate contribution to that sovereign capability development.
Great, thanks. Got that. Now, a special treat by a time machine from the 18th century, the famous economist Adam Smith, now working for a company called, how do you pronounce it, Adam? Marenav?
Marenav.
Yes.
Marine, and E like and Nav for Navy. Well, when you leave markets alone to be self-regulating, you've got a lot of time on your hands. So,
but I must say that you're looking in remarkably good shape for somebody who's 300 years old. But maybe you could you could explain again what the company does, what your role is in the maritime sector.
So our company focuses on HVAC, radar cooling, and weapons cooling. So ships are broken down into categories, ship work breakdown structured groups, and we focus on that section of the ship. That section of the ship is about 20% of the ship's volume in total. It's the third largest consumer of power behind propulsion and weapon systems. And as we're bringing ships which originally evolved in a cooler European climate to be able to maintain a defensive or offensive posture off the northern coast of Australia, HVAC cooling is the biggest strained system. And no cooling, no weapons, fight and lose. So we're dedicated. We're a single system integrator. We're looking at that part of the boat. An OEM, so an original equipment manufacturer. We've developed a full Australian supply chain, and we've already delivered fan core units, fan core assemblies, controls, radar cooling units to the Australian Navy, designed in Australia, made in Australia, supported in Australia. And people talk about minimum viable capability, but we believe our equipment exceeds anything you can buy. And we've recently shock tested it. First company to do a complex shock test to prove that it meets the grade, that if you need to rely on that equipment in a combat situation, it is going to run and continue to run through a combat shock event. So a missile going off near you and that shock wave hitting the boat. So our sailors can then complete their mission and, whatever that might be.
Are we talking about blowing something up or putting it on a shaker table? Or how does that sort of work in a physical sense?
Yeah, so to test it, what you do is you build your equipment, you put it on a rig. So we use a rig down in Melbourne. Again, that sovereignty. We were the first company to do that. And we detonate an air charge, and that basically simulates the impact. And then we do that on different angles to simulate different directions. And the criteria is pretty easy. If it's still working, you pass. If it flies apart, which a foreign valve did, you fail. So it's very binary, but that's how we can look the Navy in the eye and say, we know we meet the grade because we've tested it, that's our responsibility as an OEM and a single system integrator and a partner to Navantia. This capability, we need it to be able to go into harm's way. And we need to make sure that our subsystems, which are critical elements of the fighting capability of the ship, can achieve that. And so that's our part of the vessel, which then is the capability with the sailors to the country.
And just some basic facts and figures. How many people have you got and where are you located?
So we've got 8. We're looking for 3 more. Doesn't sound like a lot, but we've spent a lot of time developing our South Australian supply chain of manufacturers and component parts. So we've harnessed other small Australian companies to be able to manufacture our equipment to our designs, which we then assemble. So it sort of mobilizes around, if we had a sort of major, build of a ship set of fan coil assemblies, probably would mobilize 50 people through partner companies below us.
So that sounds very flexible. Now, did you find Navantia, or did they find you, or was it some sort of combination of both?
I think we found each other. So we started on HMAS Truls, which is not a Navantia vessel, but it has some similar traits of being designed for European areas and then brought to Australia. And we did the largest HVAC upgrade in Australia's history, 5,000 kilowatts of chillers, rerouted 1.5 kilometres of pipe, manufactured a whole series of equipment. And then what we did was we were talking with the Navy about the challenges we face. And then the Navy actually introduced us to Navantia and said, you guys are part of this. Navantia is part of this. We are a commonwealth. Let's work together. And so it was an introduction. And then we've already done the deck-mounted fan coil assemblies, like a sample of them on the LHD, developed a cross-platform solution that can be, installed on DDG, AOR. We've done, and this is in 6 months, I think, the provision cooling, so cooling food. But we've last week got a call about cooling a different type of radar and adapted that system. So it's, what I see is that we have an expansion of looking at the fleet with Navy, looking at our potential areas of problem, and then Marenav bringing that single system expertise, and then Navantia allowing us to integrate it into the vessel and ensuring that we've got that whole of vessel viewpoint, and like Jamie says, allowing us access to the 3D models, but also challenging what we're doing. So I like that. We need a bit of active disagreement, because then you get the best outcome. Do we need a battle short on this one? What's our redundancy status? They're the discussions you can have with a prime that, built the ships.
Well, I certainly take your point that without cooling, that's the end of the mission. You're just not going anywhere, or, you're heading back to port or whatever. Can you also say a few words about your views on the importance of sovereign capability, because this is such a recurrent theme?
No one's coming to help you. If we do get into conflict and your system shuts down and you need spare parts, and you've bought that spare part, you've got that part, and it comes through a supply chain of Europe and Turkey, and you're not getting it. And then that equipment and the equipment it supports are off. And that equipment it supports is the combat system. And then we're stuck. So our coils, all made in Australia, our IP, all Australian. If we need something, apart from a few items, a few PLCs and stuff like that, which we can stockpile, but we know every single thing about our equipment and how it's integrated. And so if there's a problem and we need a spare part, we can drive to the company who made it and get another one.
John, I'll go back to you for a moment if I could. Just again for a practical question. With the network, is it functioning as a network where all of the companies are in touch with each other, or is it Navantia like the hub in the middle of the wheel, connecting everyone separately through spokes?
Yeah, it's more at this stage. It's more like the hub and spoke arrangement, Kim. But noting what Jamie said about the introduction of the portal, I think that may give us an opportunity to have more engagement. So, for example, when we're doing design, which may have a HVAC implication, being able to then reach out to Adam and say, hey, you're the HVAC guru in terms of this TPN. How can you actually help us solve this problem? So I think that's the end point I think that Navantia would like to get to. But it's a lily pad sort of process to get there. But I think we're moving in the right direction.
Great and amazing, because Jamie has just reappeared. So just hoping for a few quick wrap-up words from you.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to pick up the point of that sovereign capability and the importance of it. Echo what John and Adam have both said about that. To have a competent and highly skilled Navy, you need a highly competent and capable crew, which we absolutely have in Australia. We need to have the machines that support that crew in providing the services that they provide. And we do have that, absolutely. But the thing that sometimes goes unnoticed is you do need the pit crew in the home port, making sure that those vessels continue to operate the way that they were designed, and that they do what they're actually designed to do. And so a sovereign capability to provide that support and what I do call a pit crew, because it takes so many different parts, engineering, maintainers, mechanics, the whole sort of supply chain that's required in maintaining those vessels to do what they need to do. So I'm really, and Navantia and myself personally, really encouraged that the Commonwealth have given us this opportunity to establish this sort of network and provide that sort of pit crew mentality to sustaining the vessels.
And presumably it's going to get a bit easier if we do finally achieve the long-sought dream of having a continuous naval shipbuilding program.
Yeah, I think we would all agree on every different level of companies that a platform for sustainable growth and sustainable investment is what industry needs.
Yeah, because I observe, of course, that the larger companies, the primes, are sort of okay, but it's you other guys that are more susceptible to the peaks and troughs of workloads and things like that. So hopefully it's going to smooth out a bit. Okay, well, unless there's anything else that any of you want to throw in as a concluding remark, we can probably all go off to the pub.
For more in-depth articles, expert opinions and exclusive interviews, visit AsiaPacificDefenceReporter.com.